Oath or affirmation. Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, Mrs. Christine Nualu Hussain, MP, member for Kamuto Mansinala, has asked to be excused from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper. The nomination of His Excellency the President in respect of the nomination of Mr. Dinanath Ramkisoon for appointment as a member of the Police Service Commission.
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Rima Borough Corporation for the years ended September 30, 2005, 2006, and 2007. The annual report of the Financial Intelligence Unit for the period October 1st to 2014 to September 30th, 2015. The Value-Added Tax Amendment to Schedule 2 Order 2016. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. And I beg to move that papers 2 to 4 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that papers numbers 2 to 4 be referred to the Public Account Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper. The Annual Administrative Report of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Affairs for the fiscal year 2012.
Minister of Planning and Development.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. Numbers 8 to 14, the annual reports of the Environmental Management Authority for the years 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012.
Reports from committees. Prime Minister's questions. Urgent questions.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Labour and Enterprise Development, in light of the layoff of 498 workers laid off by ArcelorMittal Point Lisas Limited, could the Minister state whether any assistance will be provided by the Government of Trinidad and Tobago?
Madam Speaker, in response to the Honourable Member's question, I would like to inform this House that the government remains very, very concerned regarding the layoff of these 498 permanent workers employed by ArcelorMittal for the period 3rd of February to the 13th of March. This period representing the second period of a layoff. The government, through the Minister of Labour and the Ministry of Labour, called in both parties on Carnival Friday, which was Friday the 2nd of February, meeting the employer at 10 a.m. in the morning and the union at 1:30 p.m. to bring both sides to some point of agreement. The Ministry of Labour was able to influence the employer that workers should receive remuneration during this period, and therefore the employer placed a 40% of basic wage for a 40-hour work week on the table with access up to 10 days vacation leave. The union, that position was conveyed to the union. The union required time, of course, to speak to its members. And under the aegis of the Minister of Labor, a second conciliatory meeting was held on Ash Wednesday. The Ministry of Labor was able to influence the employer to push the envelope a little further to 50% of basic salary, along with the access to 10 days vacation leave. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, both sides have not yet arrived at an agreement, and they are still meeting. As a matter of fact, under
has expired. The member for Miaro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, could the Minister state whether cocoa and coffee farmers will be compensated for their losses due to spoilage of crops as a result of the absence of a cocoa and coffee board? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, by way of background, in 2014, our friends who are now on the other side took the unprecedented decision to come to this Parliament and eliminate, by way of repeal of legislation, the decades-old mechanism for the state's involvement in the buying, selling, and export of cocoa and coffee beans. That was by Act number 7 of 2014, and at Section 7 in one line, the legislation which had underpinned this sector was removed without anything being put in place. Madam Speaker, Cocoa Development Company was incorporated and a board was appointed. Nothing further happened. After 18 months, that board put absolutely nothing in place to deal with the buying, selling, and export of cocoa. Since 2013, tons of cocoa beans have remained in warehouses across the country, unsold. In this fiscal year, this government has allocated $1.7 million to deal with financial liabilities arising from the closure of the Cocoa and Coffee Industry Board as a result of Act number 7 of 2014. This government has allocated $14 million to the Cocoa Development Company to fund its work in developing the cocoa sector. And very recently, this government appointed a new board of the Cocoa Development Company to clean up the mess left by the transition of the cocoa sector after the closure of the Cocoa and Coffee Industry Board. In closing, Madam Speaker, at this time, this ministry has received no claim for compensation from cocoa or coffee farmers for losses.
Questions on notice? Questions for oral response?
Madam Speaker, the government is in a position to answer questions number 19, number 39, number 40, number 41, number 45, and we would ask a deferral of the other two questions on the order paper. We are also prepared to circulate the written answers to the two questions on the order paper, thereby responding to almost 90% of the questions on the order paper.
Member for Oropouche West.
19 to the Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, honorable members, the Ministry of National Security has projected an expenditure of a sum of $466 million in fiscal 2016 for the acquisition and maintenance of patrol vessels. This total incorporates the following: $273,300,000 for coastal vessels and interceptors procured from the Daman Shipyard, Holland. This sum will be obtained from loan resources being sourced from the ING Bank of the Netherlands. $158,700,000 for one multipurpose vessel. 30% has already been paid by the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. 70% of the remaining cost of this vessel is to be obtained from a loan from the China Exim Bank. $34 million for fuel, lubricants, and general maintenance of the patrol boats. This will be covered by the loan resources being sourced from the ING Bank of the Netherlands. Question B. Neither the Boy Scouts Association of Trinidad and Tobago nor the Girl Guides Association of Trinidad and Tobago is under the purview of the Ministry of National Security. These associations are non-governmental organizations which receive government subventions from the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs. The subventions allocated for the Girl Guides Associations and Scout Associations are $84,000 and $126,000 respectively. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has advised that there is no specific budgetary allocations for anti-gang initiatives, as these initiatives form part of the normal operations of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, with accompanying costs being absorbed into the organization's overall operations allocation. With respect to the youth clubs, the Police Youth Club got an allocation of $5 million. The Fire Service Youth Club, no budgetary allocations. Prison Youth Club, no budgetary allocations. Cadet Force, $6,559,650. The National Mentorship Program, $3,500,000. Madam Speaker.
Member for Barataria, Sanwan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 39 to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And the answer is, none of the above named hospitals have ever been accredited by an international accreditation agency.
Supplemental.
Sure.
Barataria, Sanwan.
Thanks. Could the Minister indicate whether the Couva Children's Hospital was built to international accreditation standards?
Please ask a supplemental question that was not part of the question. You should know. You should know.
Member for Barataria, Sanwan.
Question number 40 to the Minister of Community Development and Culture and Arts.
Thank you. The Barataria Community Center will be open by the end of February 2016.
Member for Barataria, Sanwan.
Question number 41 to the Minister of Community Development, Culture and Arts.
By Cabinet Minute number 450 of December 17, 2015, Government approved funding to support Carnival 2016 activities of the Caribbean Prestige Foundation for the Performing Arts, Soca Monarch, and Southex Event Management Company Limited, Chutney Soca Monarch, in the total sum of $6,400,000. Total to Soca Monarch being $3.45 million and Chutney Soca Monarch $2.95 million.
Member for Barataria, Sanwan, supplemental question.
No, thank you.
Member for Faisabad.
Speaker, question number 45 to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The total number of cesarean sections performed during the year 2015 at public hospitals was 3,550. Based on the information received from the regional health authorities, an average of 38% of these cesarean sections were performed or directly supervised by a special medical officer or consultant.
Thank you. In view of the recent maternal deaths associated with cesarean section deliveries, is the Honourable Minister satisfied that this percentage represents appropriate and adequate expert care for women undergoing cesarean section at our nation's hospital? And if he is not, Madam Speaker, what are his plans to correct the situation?
Thank you. No one can be happy with these figures, and these are figures for 2015. What I can tell you, since assuming office, these figures have gone up considerably, from 38% in 2015 to almost 50% now. under this administration. What we plan to do, first of all, our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, took the unprecedented step of appointing Dr. Vincent Welch on a committee to look into the operations of the RHAs. And one of the terms of reference is the whole issue of the relationship between consultants and the employer and how they work in the private sector. This, I believe, when that report comes in, will have a significant impact on those figures, and I assure you we are doing all that we can to correct all the misgivings of the past. Thank you very much.
Member for Caroni Central. Caroni East, I'm sorry.
Honorable Minister, would you be able to tell how many of these cesarean sections were elective as opposed to emergency?
That is another question. The details of that I don't have now. It wasn't asked. Thank you.
Member for Barataria.
Minister of Health, I just want to ask you, when do you expect to get the report of the Winston Welch Committee?
As we announced when the committee was first unveiled to the public, that report is hopefully due by April of 2016. So we expect to have it within the next 2 months, sir.
For Barataria Sanwan.
Thank you. We have been waiting for the Children Life Fund audit report since December 21st. Would the Winston Welch report take that same amount of time and that delay?
Member, I would not allow that as a supplementary question.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance.
Member for Point of Pear.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. In accordance with Standing Order 17 of the House of Representatives, I hereby seek your leave to move the adjournment of the House at today's Friday, the 19th of February, 2016 sitting of the House for the purpose of discussing a definite matter of urgent public importance, namely the crippling effects of the restricted access to foreign exchange by businesses and individuals. The matter is definite because it pertains to the current situation faced by businesses and individuals who are constrained by the minimal and nominal amounts of foreign exchange made available to them for purchase from commercial banks in Trinidad and Tobago. It is urgent because if this disastrous situation is not rectified as soon as possible, businesses and individuals will not be able to honor the contractual and financial obligations to foreign suppliers. And it is of public importance because if this situation is allowed to continue, it will lead to the collapse of businesses, the loss of jobs, the destabilization of the economy, a loss of confidence in Trinidad and Tobago by foreign investors and suppliers in an unprecedented plethora of social problems.
Honorable members, I am not satisfied that this matter qualifies under this standing order. I advise that the member pursue this matter under Standing Order 16. The member for Caroni East.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 17, I hereby seek leave to move the adjournment of this House for the purpose of raising the following definite matter of urgent public importance at today's sitting of the House, and that is the confirmed threat to the health and welfare of the country by the Zika virus. The matter is definite because the Honorable Minister of Health has declared the virus as a national public health emergency, and the World Health Organization, WHO, has also declared the virus a global health emergency. And this was emphasized in a statement by the Honorable Prime Minister at the 27th intersessional meeting of the CARICOM heads of government recently in Belize. The matter is urgent because of the real and dreadful potential to affect the lives of all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and requires the need for a collective and dedicated approach by all to the prevention and eradication of this debilitating and dangerous virus, and development of protocols as indicated by the Honorable Prime Minister at the intersessional meeting in Belize recently. The matter is of public importance because of the widespread fear now being experienced, Madam Speaker, particularly by approximately 17,000 pregnant patients at risk this year, and the critical implications for the health of our national population of becoming infected by the Zika virus. Thank you.
Honorable members, I have considered the motion of the member for Caroni East, and I'm satisfied that this motion qualifies to be raised as a definite matter of urgent public importance. Is this agreed by the Honorable House?
Aye.
Could all those who are agreed please stand? Okay. And therefore, in accordance with Standing Order 17.4, the debate of this motion will stand over until 6 p.m.
Statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills. Paper number 1, the Family and Children Division Bill 2016 in the name of the Attorney General. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister. Public business, government business, motions.
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas Section 122(3) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Chapter 101, the Act provides that the President shall, after consultation with the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition, nominate persons who are qualified and experienced in the disciplines of law, finance, sociology, or management to be appointed as members of the Police Service Commission. And whereas Section 122(4) of the Act provides that the President shall issue a notification in respect of each person nominated for appointment under subsection 3, and the notification shall be subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives. And whereas the President has nominated Mr. Dinanath Ramkisoon to be appointed as a member of the Police Service Commission, and whereas the President has, on the 28th day of January 2016, made a notification in respect of the nomination, and whereas it is expedient to approve the nomination, be it resolved that the notification of the nomination of Mr. Dinanath Ramkisoon be approved. Madam Speaker, in bringing this motion to the House of Representatives in an expeditious manner, the government has underscored the importance that it places on ensuring that the Police Service Commission is fully constituted to effectively discharge its critical role in the management of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, foremost of which would be the appointment of a permanent police commissioner and deputy police commissioner. And, Madam Speaker, we expect that if this motion is successful, and we expect it will be, we do not expect any objection from honourable members opposite, that the Police Service Commission, being further strengthened by the addition of additional member, will move with dispatch to the task of the appointment of a permanent police commissioner. The role of the Police Service Commission is critical to our national security effort. The socio-economic conditions within which the police service operates have changed over the years, with new patterns of rural and urban development and settlement, social media, and other demographic factors affecting how the police perform their duties. Modern policing requires an independent police force that is held accountable, not just by the government, but by a wider network of agencies and organizations working on behalf of the interests of the people. It calls for strategies to address public safety and requires a comprehensive approach, including problem-oriented and intelligence-led and data-driven policing. In this context, an effective police service commission is expected to be an innovative and proactive oversight body that sets, facilitates, and monitors governance and accountability and professional standards by assessing, reviewing, and evaluating operations, plans, and strategies. Given this role, one of the primary functions, as I've said before, is to appoint a commissioner of police. We intend that the duly constituted body will be given all assistance that it requires to allow a qualified police commissioner to be appointed in the shortest possible time. The current situation, where we've had an acting police commissioner with, I believe it is 7 acting stints of 6 months since 2012, has gone on for far too long and must be rectified. The mandate of the Commission, just let me inform honourable members, under Section 123(1)(d) of the Constitution, is to monitor the efficiency and effectiveness of the Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioners of Police. Some of the Commission's other functions include appointment and removal of the Commissioners of Police and Deputy Commissioners of Police, the exercise of disciplinary action in respect to those officers, and the hearing and determination of appeals of police officers or claims made by police officers against decisions of the Commissioner of Police on promotions and discipline, and, as I indicated, the monitoring of the effectiveness of the Commissioner. In moving forward, the Commission must continue to focus on strengthening its capacity in terms of evaluation of the effectiveness of the police service, human resources, public communication, organizational reform, and recommendations for legislative reform. Let us move straight into the nominee, Madam Speaker. I do not think we need to detain this House with any lengthy debate today. So let us move straight in to the qualifications of the nominee, Mr. Ramkissoon. The CV or the resume of Mr. Dinanath Ramkissoon should have been circulated to members, and his qualifications are Master of Laws in Public Law at the University of the West Indies, a legal education certificate from the Sir Hugh Wooding Law School, Bachelor of Laws from the University of London, and a diploma in the science of fingerprint from the Joint Services Staff College, among other qualifications. He has a police training college diploma as well, and a number of certificates with respect to participation in workshops and conferences on anti-money laundering, investigation of corruption, procurement, and so on. His work experience, he's currently the Vice President of Legal Services at the National Infrastructure Development Company, having joined that organization in 2008 as the Senior Legal Officer. Prior to that, prior to joining NIDCO, his duties were as a state prosecutor in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Prior to that, he was a police officer. He attained the rank of Detective Inspector, Senior Fingerprint Expert, and prior to that, he was a part-time lecturer, or during that period, a part-time lecturer at the Cipriani College of Labor, lecturing in criminal law, civil law, environmental and planning, legislation, and criminology. And he has as his references Justice Henderson, Judge of the International Criminal Court, and Mr. Alkins, retired Registrar of the Office of the Integrity Commission. I am also advised that he has done work for the Integrity Commission. He was Counsel, Investigation and Compliance, working with the Integrity Commission between the years 2004 and 2008. On the face of it, and not having any adverse reports about Mr. Ramkisoon, I beg to move.
Honorable members, I will now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that the notification of the nomination of Mr. Dinanath Ramkisoon be approved. Member for Oropouche East.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute on this motion presented by the Leader of the House. Madam Speaker, before us is a motion that seeks to affirm the notification of His Excellency, the President, of the appointment of a citizen, Mr. Dinanath Ramkisoon, to the Police Service Commission. Madam Speaker, we have heard the presentation from the member for Diego Martin Northeast, who presented the CV in the context of the appointment to the Police Service Commission. And in a brief address, spoke to the roles and responsibilities of the Police Service Commission and the critical importance that that commission plays, particularly at a time like this, challenged as we are by a spate of crime, murders and serious offenses being committed on a daily basis. Madam Speaker, it is noteworthy that by virtue of Act number 6 of 2006 that amended our Constitution and our legal arrangements to ensure that persons proposed to the Police Service Commission come before the Parliament, at least their resume. It was a very landmark achievement by 2006, coming out of a bipartisan approach of the then opposition United National Congress and the incumbent government of the former member for San Fernando East, Mr. Patrick Manning. It was meant, Madam Speaker, to ensure that in this one critical commission, because I believe this is the only commission where the members are brought to the Parliament for public scrutiny in this manner. It was because of the critical need to ensure that we move the envelope yet again towards transparency, openness, and public scrutiny of persons who are appointed to such commissions. And it was an attempt that started, I imagine, since 1962. My friend from Moruga Tableland, who regaled us on a previous occasion of his knowledge of economic history, regrettably believing himself to be a stepchild of the ministry, but he understands economic history well and understands the history of the country. And it came out of our independence experience, where the early founding fathers of the independence movement sought to protect citizens from the political directorate by virtue of creating the independent service commissions. And that had moved and moved and moved until a major goalpost came in 2006 that allowed for something like the American, akin to the American congressional system, where a person can be scrutinized by elected officials. And this is done in the lower house by the elected members of Parliament. Maybe in another time in the future, the persons themselves may have to present themselves to the House or a committee of the House and be interviewed in another forum. But as it is now, those persons come here by virtue of the CV, and we are allowed to scrutinize. We may look at their CV, ensure that it is consistent with the legislation, with the intent of the legislation, and to ensure that those persons are fit and proper. I want to begin by congratulating first Mr. Ramkisoon on accepting the offer to serve in this manner, and by subjecting himself to public scrutiny. There was a time in this country, Madam Speaker, when persons would be serving on service commissions and teaching service commissions and other commissions, and the general public would not even know who is on a commission. You would not know who. Because in time gone by, it would be persons of a certain class, in some cases you believe a certain clique, a certain club, and by virtue of connections to a political elite, they will serve on commissions and so on. That we saw to change over the last few decades to ensure that persons now come before us and the national community can scrutinize such persons for their appointments. And that is something that we are very mindful of. Madam Speaker, the mover of the motion spoke about the importance of modern policing, developing independent institutions and new strategies to combat criminal activity. And in doing so, the Police Service Commission serves a very, very critical function. And we cannot overstate the function of the Police Service Commission, Madam Speaker. And if by virtue of the delivery of the mover, he dealt with one matter, and I think concentrated on one matter as well, which is the critical matter of the appointment of a Commissioner of Police. It is a very critical matter, the appointment of the Commissioner of Police. And within recent time, that matter has been in the public domain by virtue of other parliamentary sit-ins and other initiatives of the government, and the government over the past as well, I dare say. Madam Speaker, it is not the only function of the Commission to deal with the matter of appointment of a Commissioner of Police. Indeed, the Police Service Commission, by virtue of Section 123 as well, undertake critical functions dealing with the police service. And it involves a critical function as an appeal tribunal as well, an appellate body, to listen to appeals of police officers against decisions made by the Commissioner of Police pursuant to his role, expanded role, by the amendments that were brought and the new laws, including the Police Service Act, that was brought in 2006. Madam Speaker, a government cannot speak about strengthening institutions, independent constitutional institutions, in one breath, and do not seek to approve and support persons who are well-equipped and fit to occupy those positions. And it is, of course, for that purpose we are here. The Minister indicated to us clearly the qualifications of the nominee before us. It is something that we have all had an opportunity to take a look at, and I will get to that in a few minutes. But Madam Speaker, it is also important to note that the Police Service Commission has the responsibility, apart from appointing persons to hold or act in the office of Commissioner of Police, to hear and determine by virtue of Section 123 and by virtue of the Amendment Act of 2006, to hear and determine appeals by police officers against decisions made by the Commissioner in respect of promotions and discipline, to exercise disciplinary control over the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner of Police, including removal of those officers from office. But the Police Service Commission also plays the role of monitoring the efficiency and effectiveness of the performance of the Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioner of Police in the discharge of their function. They also prepare an annual performance appraisal report in such a form as may be prescribed by the Commission, respecting and for the information of the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner. Madam Speaker, this is a very, very critical function that the Police Service Commission plays. Over the past years, they have also had, as the member indicated, the opportunity to involve themselves in the public discourse on crime and have hosted stakeholder consultations. There was one, I believe, in 2012-13 there, which ended with something called the Hilton Consensus, which dealt with the reform of the Police Service Commission. And the critical role of this commission revolves around not just the appointment of the Commissioner of Police. Madam Speaker, I would have thought that the Minister presenting this would have indicated to the House not only the government's commitment to the independent institution of the Police Service Commission. But what do they foresee the role of the Independent Police Service Commission, what role that commission would play in the future? Now, if we are to look at the role and responsibility of the commission, it must synchronize with the qualifications of the nominee. Because if you have a role and responsibility of a task, you must mesh the task with the qualifications of persons who are going to occupy the office to fulfill that task. And the government, at some time today, or in the very near future, ought to tell the country as well what would be the relationship between another policy proposal this government made in the national budget. What is the relationship between the proposed police management agency and the Police Service Commission? Because the law, as currently structured, allows the Police Service Commission to monitor the performance of the commissioner and deputy commissioner. And those persons can bring their reports, and I'll speak to that reporting process in a bit, but they can bring their reports to the commission as far as they manage the human and the financial resources that are available to the commission. So that the Police Service Commission monitors the effectiveness of the commissioner and deputy commissioner. And the commissioner and deputy commissioner in the law has now the authority to manage their budget, to manage their human resources. But what happens when a police management agency evolves? Since the police management agency, so far, is not connected to the Police Service Commission, does the police management agency supersede the management of the Commissioner of Police? And if so, will the police management agency report to the Police Service Commission? What is the relationship? And those are critical issues that the government ought to address its mind to, if not today, certainly in the near future, because there are implications for management, for authority, and for control. If it is that the government believes that the Police Service Commission has not played a satisfactory role in calling the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Commissioner to account for their management, because, Madam Speaker, I want to submit that the very policy of introducing a police management agency supposes that the government has no confidence in the Police Service Commission. They have no confidence in the Police Service Commission. And on a previous occasion, issues were raised concerning the changing role of the Police Service Commission and the appointment of the Commissioner of Police, where it is now left to an independent firm, and I imagine that process has been triggered quite recently by the Minister of National Security, an independent firm to undertake the recruitment process, the assessment process, and pass on by way of be almost a messenger. The Police Service Commission becomes a messenger to the President to appoint a police commissioner. So we have already seen this government watering down the role of the Police Service Commission. And today, the government should tell us what is the role of the Police Management Authority Agency vis-a-vis the Police Service Commission, and are they committed to a truly independent Police Service Commission? That is a fundamental issue that they ought to deal with. Because, Madam Speaker, there is a disquiet in the society today about this creeping incident of the government seeking to control constitutionally independent institutions.
Yes, central bank.
Colleagues have raised the issue, which I will just raise in passing because it's not the subject of this debate. I hope we can debate on another occasion. The role of the government and the executive in taking away the authority of the parliament in its own construction for its own parliamentary building.
But I would just like to remind you of Standing Order 48-1. I've allowed you a certain measure of leeway, but please confine yourself to the subject matter of this debate.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, as I said, I just mentioned that in passing, because I'm dealing with the independent institution of the Police Service Commission, not the Red House and the hijacking of the Red House project. But the Police Service Commission, Madam Speaker, has the functions in law to deal with appeals. from the police officers. Madam Speaker, we are informed that at this time there may be over 200, possibly 250 appeals before the Police Service Commission by police officers. In 1 year, in 2013, I believe, 3 appeals were dealt with. The Commission has been crying out for help, for resources. I'm very happy that when we were in office, it is under the government of the People's Partnership that the Police Service Commission got help by the relocation of their offices to Tanapuna. For many years, they have been seeking assistance for accommodation. It became so bad, Madam Speaker, that employees of the Police Service Commission didn't want to go to work in Port of Spain in fear of crime. And we had to take urgent action to relocate their offices to Tanapuna. And since then, they have been crying out for other facilities and other processes. Madam Speaker, I am informed that the current arrangement where the Police Service Commission is dependent on the Director of Personnel Administration for assistance with human resources, finance, minor goods and services and so on, is unworkable. Unworkable. I am told that for 6 months they couldn't even move the newspapers arriving from the Port of Spain office to the office in Tanapura. For 6 months. Simple things like getting chairs and furniture and so on. Takes a long time. Now, I am not blaming anybody or any particular agency. These are systems that evolve over time, and in the public service, they take a lot of time. Over the years, I have known of problems in the Immigration Division where we had to move overnight with another agency just to help, because the established processes take a long time. It may well be that the time has come for the government to consider the recommendations that have emerged over the years in terms of providing the Police Service Commission with greater control over resources and over its budget. So that the Police Service Commission has been asking, and Madam Speaker, I would make reference because we have already in the Parliament 2 reports of the Joint Select Committee appointed to inquire and report on municipal corporations and service commissions, with the exception of the Judicial and Legal Service Commission. We have reports, Madam Speaker, the 4th report and the 8th report. The 4th report dated, published by the Parliament, of course, of 2012, and the 8th report, Madam Speaker, of 2013, where it is very clear that the Police Service Commission came to the Parliament, to the Joint Select Committee, made their case, and recommendations, the issues were heard, recommendations were made, and Madam Speaker, the appointment of Mr. Ramkisoon, who is qualified as the member indicated in matters of law, but also, Madam Speaker, qualified in matters of management, not just law, management, contract negotiations, as we see here, dealing with human resource and industrial relations matters as well, and would have come through the rank of the police service, would have some knowledge of the operations of the police service, but would also have knowledge, Madam Speaker, of the operation of oversight organizations that exercise oversight. And the recommendations included, Madam Speaker, emanating from the work of Parliament itself. So we don't have to go and reinvent the wheel. You don't have to go and have a next consultation on the Police Service Commission and how to make it more effective. We have reports of the Parliament. The government has to indicate a commitment to implementing the recommendations, which they themselves sign off to. Because as you know, the working of these committees suggests that we have had members of the government and opposition and the independent benches. In fact, there are a couple of members of this committee who are today in the House at this moment, and they would be aware of those reports, where recommendations were made for the Commission, Madam Speaker, to have its own separate vote of funds in the national budget and its own dedicated accounting officers, because the arrangements with the Director of Personnel Administration are efficient and outmoded. The recommendation that I want to come to, a key recommendation, involves a matter that someone like Mr. Ramkisoon here would be very much alive to, would very much have to work with. And this has to do, Madam Speaker, with the committee recommends provisions be made for the appeals tribunal to function on a full-time basis. And that's a critical recommendation. Because, Madam Speaker, it is known that when appeals are made and they take ages to be determined, it is to the disadvantage of the police officers. It is to the disadvantage of the society. Officers who ought to be fighting crime and working in the service, they are demotivated because their matters are pending years. Their morale is low. In some cases, but not in all, they may be off duty on full pay leave pending determination of their appeals. And if the system is not strengthened to ensure that appeals are heard, and we started this work, it's not to say we didn't know of it, we know of it. We started the work by providing professional accommodation, adequate accommodation and facilities for the Police Service Commission by 2013. But more is required to be done, including legislative change, to ensure that the appeals tribunal function effectively by providing support infrastructure to assist the tribunal to fulfill its mandate. And if this is not done, we can appoint Mr. Ramkisoon today, and we could appoint persons eminently qualified like Mr. Ramkisoon and others. But if we do not provide the infrastructure for them to operate, do not bring the legislative reform needed and the policy change required from Cabinet, then the Commission would continue and would be struggling to deal with appeals, to deal with with the one area of appeals. I am very happy when I read the CV of Mr. Ramkisoon. We were very happy to look at the breadth of experience and the professional training and experience. And there was a time, Madam Speaker, when a matter concerning a nominee came before this House, and we spent an entire night, I believe, debating and we went down the wire with great discourse on interpretation as to what qualified and experience as opposed to qualified or experience in law, finance, and management, and so on. And thankfully, I don't think we'll go down that road today, given the clarity with which the Minister presented his motion. But, Madam Speaker, a critical function of this commission is also to engage the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner, to engage them in a scientific method, not by VAPs and not by calling in people and asking them any old question thing, but on a scientific, using scientific methodologies to engage them on performance appraisal, measuring their performance. And it is to that issue that I speak now, because if we do not have persons with the necessary qualifications to undertake such a task, then the performance appraisal function can go down the drain. And Mr. Ramkisoon has that type of training as well, apart from the legal training and so on. He has that training as well in overseeing high-level officials in the public service, in monitoring their performance and so on, and in auditing their work. Because the Police Service Commission is really a commission that is there in a way to audit the work of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And the government now is preoccupied and fascinated by auditing. Everywhere you go now, they're auditing everything.
Audit and review.
And my friend from Port of Spain, North, St. Anne's West, could tell us if he joins the debate. I know he has a big interest in auditing government work, functions, and so on. Tell us about that. But the Police Service Commission is, in effect, auditing the work of the Commissioner of Police. And they are an independent institution. They're not a private institution that you take an audit, you're auditing at a private institution, and government ministers regularly visiting private accounting firms to influence in one way or another, politically influence the conduct of audits. Madam Speaker, that is taking place today. This is an independent institution, the Police Service Commission. A government minister cannot walk in the Police Service Commission and seek to bully or influence the conduct of audits on agencies of the government. And if any minister is doing that, they ought to stop, cease and desist, because they will pollute auditing reports coming from private auditing firms. So, Madam Speaker, and this is why the Police Service Commission is so important. This is why it is so important. That is why it is so important. And the Attorney General may wish to speak to that because he's aware of the problem. And he does nothing about it. He does nothing about it. And, Madam Speaker, as I am on the issue of the audit of the police service, over the years, the Police Service Commission has been proactive. I recall a couple of years ago, the Police Service Commission called in a former deputy commissioner and actually sought to question the commissioner on the allegation of the appointment of a flying squad or something like that. Today, the Police Service Commission may want to call in the Commissioner of Police to ask him what is the policy on police officers hosting TV programs, on whether these TV programs are sponsored by Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And you see, this will upset them. This will upset them, I know this, because they know they are interfering in the conduct of independent audits. Madam Speaker, the Police Service Commission may wish to engage the Commissioner of Police on the role and function of police officers undertaking multimedia and media presentations, whether they represent the police service or they don't. That was a matter that arose a couple of years ago. That has serious consequences for discipline and for the conduct of police duties. Madam Speaker, when you look at the resume of the gentleman before us as well, you're also seeing qualification, certification, participation in programs and so on that deals with the overseeing important institutions. I think he came from NIDCO, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. But also with experience at the Integrity Commission and investigations dealing with allegations of corruption and so on. And these are matters in the police service that they are dealing with now. So it is timely that someone like this can find themselves on the Police Service Commission. Madam Speaker, the Police Service Commission may also want to discuss with the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner the introduction of more stringent, more regular psychological evaluation of police officers. This is a country today where criminals are killing innocent citizens, where policemen are killing themselves. And it may require greater emphasis on the psychological evaluation and regular evaluation of police officers in a manner that is very systematic, calculated, without any need to disgrace or shame police officers and so on. The Police Service Commission ought to take a look at this. And someone like Mr. Ramkisoon with his qualifications and also the experience, I think he joined the police service in 1975, yes. In 1975, joined the police service, Madam Speaker, 1975 to the year 2000, would have a good knowledge of the police service, the functioning of police officers, the stress that they subject themselves to on duty and off duty, and whether or not that type of stress over a period of time can cause a level of depression, distress that lead them to commit criminal actions themselves or to endanger the life of ordinary citizens and their own lives. And the Police Service Commission is well poised to undertake that matter. Madam Speaker, the issue also arose over the past with the Police Service Commission having responsibility to appoint the Commissioner of Police. That has been brought to the Parliament earlier. I don't want to spend too much time on that either. But to indicate that it is not a straightforward matter at this time also, although the government may wish to suggest that is a straightforward matter now. Because the role of the Police Service Commission has been undermined. It has been undermined in that process. And we are at a very important critical juncture in the evolution of the Police Service Commission. And it is an issue that Mr. Ramkisoon and other commissioners may well want to consider at this time. because there is a feeling that the Police Service Commission will not be strengthened, but will be weakened at a time like this in terms of their capacity to undertake their function. And you can have a sense of it, Madam Speaker, because in the recommendations coming out of the 8th report of the Joint Select Committee was very instructive, that the Police Service Commission made recommendations to the Parliament, which the Parliament adopted. So these are recommendations which the Parliament agrees to, but it has to be translated into policy and law. That the Police Service Commission, yes.
Time has expired. You're entitled to a 15 minutes extension.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you intend to avail yourself of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Leave is granted.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker.
I want to know who is that minister walking in audits and so on.
We'll come to that. We'll come to that. Madam Speaker, so that the Police Service Commission, in undertaking its duties, need to be cognizant as well of that changing political environment. Need to be cognizant of the fact that they may be understaffed, under-resourced, given a changing political climate, the coming of the Police Management Agency, the watering down of their role as it relates to the appointment of a Commissioner of Police. And now, Madam Speaker, I took note of the statements of the Minister when he moved the motion and spoke of the qualifications, speaking of the mandate and professional standards required and so on, that it struck us that it may also be an attempt by the government to delay, Madam Speaker, to delay the implementation of recommendations in the Joint Select Committee reports. They have recommended here, which the Parliament accepted, that the law be changed to allow the Police Service Commission greater teeth to mandate and to ensure that the Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner, as the case may be, present in a timely manner their reports and other documents requested by the Police Service Commission. As it is now, the Police Service Commission can request documents, can request reports. The police will tell the Commission, yes, we are working on that, but of course we are very busy, we are doing other things. Months can pass, possibly years, and the Police Service Commission will not get the documents available. In fact, at the last call, they said they had 60% completed an evaluation of the Commissioner of Police. They are waiting on documents. And the Parliament agreed that the law and policy be so changed to allow, Madam Speaker, the Police Service Commission to mandate and order the Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner to ensure that they supply information in a timely manner to the Police Service Commission. Because, Madam Speaker, what is the sense you have all these commissions, independent commissions and so on, and you on paper they are there, but you do not give them the resources, you do not change the law, reform the law, to ensure that they have greater teeth to do their work, and then you try to invent new institutions, like the Police Management Agency, new institutions to manage the police service, while the existing institutions are understaffed, under-resourced, and clearly without personnel. In fact, there's another matter that they raised in the same report. Madam Speaker, I don't have the time to read in detail the findings of the Joint Select Committee, but to indicate that the Police Service Commission requested and the Joint Select Committee accepted that the strength of the Police Service Commission, the human resources, the professional resources be increased to allow them to do their job. Whether it is those persons on the tribunal for the appeals or simple office staff. Simple office staff. And those things take ages working with the current arrangements with the Director of Personnel Administration. They recommended here, they recommended that another method be found to ensure that the Commission gets effective support in human resources and physical resources, since the current arrangements with the Director of Personnel Administration is not effective. That is the recommendation. And the government ought to come to the Parliament and indicate to us today whether they believe that they will bring a legislative agenda And Madam Speaker, I wanted to note in passing that over the years, matters like these came at the end of a parliamentary sitting where we have debated 3 or 4 government bills, and at the end we passed this. Today, this is the only thing on the agenda, only thing that we came here for, because the government themselves, having complained for 5 years, today they have no legislative agenda. They started on the wrong foot when the Attorney General announced the budget date and the Minister of Finance spoke to the legislative agenda. They started on the wrong foot. And they have no legislative agenda. That is why we are here today at 1:30 to deal with a matter that really ought to come at the end. They have none. Their agenda is to blame the last government, prosecute, conduct politically polluted audits where ministers are polluting that process. That's the agenda.
Who are those ministers?
That is the agenda. And Madam Speaker, coming to the resume of the nominee, because the minister anticipated that the opposition will support. The minister anticipated that the opposition will support. I don't know where you got that from. But looking at the qualifications of the person, in fact, the only thing they don't have here, I think, is his date of birth. But he must be a seasoned and experienced man to join the police service in 1975. So looking at the CV here as presented, the person is qualified to serve on this commission, has the requisite qualification. The only thing that we are in fear of is that a person like this making the sacrifice for public service, putting his name up today. I think he's from the glorious constituency of where? Oropouche? Sure. Well, everybody claim it now, but I think as a prominent citizen who has really dedicated himself to public service as well and subjected himself to this scrutiny, one want to be careful that persons, when they subject themselves to this scrutiny, do not go onto commissions and then the very executive that proposed them undermine the commission and undermine their roles. Because that has been a problem in this country, where we elevate prominent citizens to commissions and so on, and then you undermine the commission. They leave in disgust, in disgrace. They believe that, their work is undermined, and that ought not to happen at the Police Service Commission, given where we are. So, Madam Speaker, the government of the day has certain responsibilities before it, if they are serious. If they are serious. This, as you know, and as I know, is not a crime debate. This is not a time for us to talk about the crime debate. I'm sure the Minister of National Security can do that at another time. Needless to say, I think the murder rate is how much? 68 for this year. So, while I'm talking, somebody was shot. So, Madam Speaker, it is a critical problem facing this country today. It is a critical problem. Over the years, while we were happy that serious crime decreased by almost 50% over the period 2010 to 2015, the murder rate was going down. The murder rate was edging down. Yes.
You
Sure.
have the standing order with respect to relevance. Could you bring back to the matter before us?
Speaker. So as I said, crime is the issue. The Police Service Commission, by virtue of its role and responsibilities, is a crime-fighting commission. It has to be. The Police Service Commission is a crime-fighting commission. If they collapse and don't do their job effectively, it will not help in the fight against crime. It will not help. So, Madam Speaker, I understand clearly this issue. And the government ought to make a commitment to increase the resources, properly staff, provide the independence necessary for the Police Service Commission in terms of its own budget, its own capacity to command the human resources, goods and services. It is not a joke when you hear that a Police Service Commission say it takes 6 months before a newspaper could change the Express and Guardian news. They come from one address to change it to the next one. It takes 6 months to do that. And these are the issues that the government ought to be dealing with. These are the issues. Not threatening people, not blaming others. They are there now. They cried out to be there, they are there. They're in charge now. They're in charge now. So don't blame former administration. When we were there, we gave some resources, we gave office accommodation, we moved ensure we brought nominees to the House, ensure they were affirmed and so on. The task is now to the government to ensure that this commission works. Because as we have stated, it is critical. It cannot be that 247 appeals are before a commission and they deal with 3 per year. How much years it would take to deal with all of that? And your human resources lay idle. Surely a matter like that deserves emphasis, policy and legal intervention by the government. And today, this was an opportune moment. I'm hoping that the moment is not lost. But this was an opportune moment for the government to make such a commitment, which they could not, which certainly the member for the Gomartin Northeast, deputizing, I imagine, to do this job, reading from a prepared text which someone gave him a few minutes before, would not have been in a position to make those commitments. But if the debate, if the Minister of National Security, the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, I almost going to say the Junior Minister, but I don't like hearing that, the Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General, you know.
What they have my hair doing.
The Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General, the Honorable Minister, if the Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General would join the debate, they would tell us what are their proposals as far as it relates to the Police Service Commission. It cannot be that the government just come today and say, look, this is the name, the fellow is well qualified. We support this, let's move. It cannot be that. That is really to take a superficial approach to a public debate on the Police Service Commission. When the laws were drafted, the intent, Madam Speaker, was not just to bring a CV and say, this is a good CV, let's deal with it and pass it that way. It was really to engage in a debate on the citizen, the nominee, and the functions and challenges of such a critical Police Service Commission. You know, so that I am very disappointed that the Minister, in introducing this, chose to take that really contractionary and short and brief approach without, he was short on substance. He was short on substance, which didn't surprise us. But it's sad that the government did not elaborate. And particularly with this troubling issue of this police management agency, which they shoot off policy on the hoof during the budget. And to this day, nobody knows anything about the legal and policy framework for the implementation of a police management agency. Nobody, I imagine the government members don't know either, of how are they going to deal with this matter. And they have introduced the issue of the municipal police as well, to expand that. All their proposals they introduce must be functioning within the context of an overall perspective, including the Police Service Commission. They made a lot of noise over the years about certain members on the commission. Today, hearing the minister, I imagine they're in support of this nominee. They're in support of this nominee, and that is fine. But supporting a nominee and a good nominee to the Police Service Commission will not change anything. Will not change anything unless you don't go the full distance in providing support for such an independent commission. And unless, and I warn again in closing, Madam Speaker, I warn again against this tendency to undermine constitutionally independent institutions and their work in favor of private institutions, because they have privatized the recruitment of a commissioner of police. They have privatized auditing. The Auditor General is there to conduct audits on government offices and government ministries. Pass that clean. And the Police Service Commission is here to audit the police service, the management and function and the use of resources. We are very happy. When we were in office, the police never had it so good. They never had it so good. A fleet of cars, bulletproof vests, you name it, everything.
Largest wage increase.
Largest wage increase, what, the $1,000 a month and so on. Never had it so good. You know, never had it so good. They speak about low detection rate, and what are you doing about it? You detecting little or nothing. Because you speak about that over the years, but there are no plans. It is a government, as far as the Police Service Commission is concerned, and this area, it is a government without plan, without policy, and this is a betrayal of the people. And Madam Speaker, while we affirm and support this nominee, we are afraid that this is very little, precious little, because this government doesn't have the willpower to bring the institutional changes necessary. And they will not bring the institutional changes necessary. 6 months is coming. I think it will go just now. And the country will ask itself, are we better off today than we were prior to September 2015? And the resounding answer will be no. No. It will be no. Murders continue. Joblessness. Business closure. And the Police Service Commission, Madam Speaker, the Police Service Commissioner, in managing probably the most critical area of national importance, will need the best help that they can get. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, we do support the nominee and wish him all the best in his future endeavors.
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'll just deal briefly in reverse order with the statements made by the Honourable Member for Oropouche East, whose relocation to the lower benches of the opposition has lowered the level of his contributions. Not that that might have been possible, but today it has been proven that it was. The Honourable Member said that the intent of the legislation with respect to the matter before the House, which is the confirmation or not of the notification of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago of a nomination of a person to be a member of the Police Service Commission. The Honourable Member for Oropouche East told us that the intent of the legislation that created this forum was not to bring a CV and say this is a good fellow, but to debate the role and function of the Public Service Commission. Madam Speaker, the matter before the House is the notification of the President of the nomination of Mr. Dinanath Ramkisoon. Nothing more, nothing less. I know that the Honourable Member has a tendency to be loquacious, but I would refer him to his own contribution on the 21st of January 2015, when the Honourable Member for Oropouche East, then the Minister of Housing, had this to say. After going through the CV of the nominee, Dr. Maria Therese Gomes, to be a member and chairman of the Police Service Commission, after going through the CV, work and research experience, publications and areas of service of Dr. Gomes, that's how he started off. He regaled us with the CV, the qualifications and experience of Dr. Gomes, and then had this to say, and then sat down. This nominee is eminently qualified to serve as a member of the Police Service Commission. We are here. May I remind my colleagues opposite, he was talking to us, to accept the nominee of His Excellency to serve as a member of the Police Service Commission. The government stands by this nominee, and I will ask members opposite to give support as the House can now move to approve the nomination. And he sat down. That was the contribution of the member for Oropouche East on the 21st of January 2015. Read out the CV of Dr. Gomes and told us, we're not here to talk about the police service. We're not here to talk about the Police Service Commission. We're not here to talk about crime. We're not here to talk about police car or anything like that. We are here to approve the nomination of His Excellency. And he said, oh. And I have to come here today and hear this honourable member say, the intent was not to bring a CV and say this is a good fellow, but to debate the role and function of the Public Service Commission. As I said, the relegation of the member to the lower benches of the opposition has lowered the standard of his contributions. And he was right then. That is all we are required to do. It is like a confirmation hearing that they have in Congress or in Senate in the United States, where they bring someone to as someone for the Supreme Court or as an ambassador to a foreign country. All they do in those places, is go through the track record, the qualifications and experience of the person and debate whether the person is fit and proper for the position. Full stop. Confirmation. That's all they do in the United States. And this is all about. And yes, he had to be interrupted on several occasions because he was on an adventure, a frolic into all sorts of irrelevant areas. Yes, and since he has been relegated to the lower benches, he has been prevented from speaking. Clearly, he wants to replace the member for St. Augustine in the speaking order. Since the member for St. Augustine is no longer leader of the Congress of the person. Obviously, the member for St. Augustine, by practice, should be relegated to the lower benches of the opposition. And he, by virtue of his loquaciousness, should be elevated to the upper benches of the opposition. But anyway, let us see some of the things the honourable member told us. That TV shows involving police officers, he implied there's something wrong with that. And the Public Service Commission, Police Service Commission need to look at that. It started under the UNC. The Beyond the Tape was under the UNC. You didn't have a word to say when you're in government. But 5 months into opposition, all of a sudden, you have everything to say about television shows involving police officers. I tell you, he went on the program. I tell you. Anyway, so I would not attach any credibility. To the member's sudden interest in television shows about the police. The member also told us that he and his administration presided over the brilliant move of moving the PFC office to Tunapuna. Now the police headquarters is in Port of Spain. Moving that too. But you're moving the Police Service Commission to Tunapuna when they are required to deal with appeals by police officers and also to monitor the effectiveness of the Commissioner of Police. Why? Does that make sense? Why would you want to put the Police Service Commission in Tunapuna when police headquarters are in Port of Spain? Somebody had a place to rent in Tunapuna. Yes, somebody must have had a place to rent. That's all I have to say. It doesn't matter who it is. Somebody had a place to rent. Now, let us deal with the role of the Police Service Commission vis-a-vis the role of the Police Management Agency. And one of the things I would never accuse the honourable member of, never accuse the honourable member for Oropouche of illiteracy. Never. So I know that the honourable member for Oropouche has read the terms of reference, the documents relating to the role and function of the Police Service Commission. And I know that he knows, because he's a widely read man, that the Commission is empowered by the Constitution to evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of the performance of the Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioner of Police, to hear and determine appeals by officers against the Commissioner, his decisions, to appoint the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner of Police, and to remove from office the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner of Police. That is the function and role of the Police Service Commission. And I know the honourable member would have read this. I also know, since he's a widely read man, that he would have read the seminal work, Let's Do This Together, PNM 2015 Election Manifesto. I know he's a widely read man. In fact, I think I gave him a copy. And if he went to page 24 of the PNM Manifesto, he would see what the role and function of the Police Management Agency is. And that is to uphold accountability in the police service, to develop the skills and professionalism of the workforce, to enhance the capability to plan and execute police operations, to implement effective operational processes, practice, and doctrine, set and maintain the ethics and values that need to be embedded in the services and the professional culture of the police service. So that since the Honourable Member for Oropouche East is a very literate man, and I know he has read this, I know that he knows the difference between appointment of the commissioner and monitoring the effectiveness of the commissioner and all of these things, which is to develop professionalism and skills and training and effectiveness within the lower ranks of the police service. The agency is simply an organization that would help to build professionalism, uphold accountability, would enhance the capability of the police force, implement operational processes, practice and doctrine, and set and maintain ethics and values. Chalk and cheese. All the Police Service Commission does is appoint the commissioner and the deputy commissioner and monitors the effectiveness of these two people, and it also has the power to remove the commissioner and the Police Service Commissioner, and it deals with appeals coming from police officers. The Police Service Commission has no mandate to deal with operational matters within the police, with respect to training of the police, to enhancing the capability of the police to execute operations, to implement practice and doctrine, and set and maintain ethics and values. That is not the business of the Police Service Commission. So the difference between the agency, which is an organization which would build the capacity within the police service at the ranks below the Commissioner of Police, and the Service Commission, which simply appoints the commissioner, is something as wide as the Grand Canyon. And therefore, I am very disappointed that the Honourable Member would seek to pretend that the police management agency, as proposed by the People's National Movement and the Police Service Commission, are one and the same. Chalk and cheese. With respect to the process for the appointment of a police commissioner, I can report that the Minister of National Security has fulfilled his responsibility, and he has sent a request to the Commission on Wednesday of this week to initiate the process for the recruitment of a police service commissioner. And let me deal with the final piece of mischief brought into this House by the Honourable Member for Oropouche East, and that is that under the new regulations, all the Police Service Commission will become is a messenger, a post office. And let me read into the record for not the first time what the new regulations say. After the appointment of the firm, and the firm goes through its process of advertisement and evaluation, the firm then submits to the Police Service Commission the results of its assessment process in the form of a shortlist, a report on the assessment process, including the application, the biography of the candidates, the scores, the feedback, the medical report, security report, and so on. And the operative section follows, which is 3E. The Police Service Commission shall then take into account all of the information presented to it, and thereafter establish an order of merit list. So there is no change in terms of the powers and the authority of the Police Service Commission under the new regulations. The Police Service Commission is still required, after receiving the results of the process from the firm, to make its own decision. It is empowered to change the order. It is empowered to place one candidate higher than another. The Police Service Commission makes its own decision as an independent body when it receives the information from the firm as to which candidate in its absolute discretion is first on the order of merit list, which candidate is second on the merit list, third, and so on. And then the Police Service Commission sends that to the President to come to this Parliament for debate. So there is absolutely no question that under the new regulations, the Commission has been relegated to a post office box or a messenger. That is utter mischief, and it is reprehensible of the member to peddle that mischief in this House. And I repeat, Section 3E of the order states the Commission shall take into account all information and thereafter establish its own order of merit list. It could go with what the firm proposes, or it could change everything and then submitted to the President for submission to this House. So with those few words, in its own absolute discretion. So with those few words, Madam Speaker, I return to the business of the House as so eloquently put by the Honourable Member on the 21st of January 2015. The matter before us is to accept the nominee of His Excellency for a member to the Police Service Commission. I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is, be it resolved that the notification of the nomination of Mr. Dinanath Ramkissoon be approved. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? I guess the ayes have it. Honourable members, as mandated by Standing Order 126, I am to announce that the Leader of the House and the Opposition Whip have reached agreement on the conduct of today's business as relates to the matter of the definite matter of urgent public importance. And therefore, in accordance with that agreement, we now transact that item of business. I now call upon the member of Caroni East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you for giving the opposition the opportunity to work with the government and be a collaborative and participatory aspect of the governance of Trinidad and Tobago to support the government in its actions in terms of ensuring the health and safety of all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. It is in that context that I'm speaking to indicate that we in the opposition are prepared to work with the government on this matter and to give our expertise where available and where it is accepted so that we can ensure that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago are protected and to ensure that the Zika virus does not give the type of pain and discomfort and the suffering that we experience with the same ubiquitous Aedes aegypti mosquito, now identified with the white leg, which have been causing problems around the world for a number of years, and first with malaria in Africa, and then with the dengue and the dengue hemorrhagic fever and the dengue hemorrhagic symptoms, which have been the main cause of death as far as the Aedes aegypti being a causative factor with the dengue problem. And we know that we have had many deaths occurring in Trinidad and Tobago as a result of the dengue problem. And then came the chikungunya. And now, as the Honourable Minister had indicated earlier on, that we now have in Trinidad and Tobago a national health emergency. And the WHO also spoke about the global health emergency with the coming on of this Zika virus. Now, the symptoms of the Zika virus, about 4 out of 5 patients who would be affected by it will not know that they have this virus, because basically it's asymptomatic in a number of patients. But the symptoms are almost similar to the flu-like symptoms of fever and headache and possibly a little joint pain and so on, but not much respiratory problem. But the real problem with the Zika virus is who does it affect and what consequential damage will occur as a result of somebody becoming infected with it. From the perspective of the health of the population, the most important people who will stand the consequential problem are the pregnant patients. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we have an annual birth rate of approximately 17,000 to 17,500 patients delivering live babies per year. So at this moment, we have approximately 17,000 pregnant patients in Trinidad who will be extremely worried now that the Zika virus is here and found in Diego Martin in the Victoria area. So what the Honorable Prime Minister was there in Belize recently, where he worked with the CARICOM heads of government and CAF, and where he spoke about determining the need for a protocol for the management, for the prevention first, for the eradication, and for the treatment and management of patients who may have the Zika virus. Now, we have had one case confirmed, but this vector moves around, and we know how fast this mosquito can cause its damage across the country. So far, it was found in Diego Martin, but it could be across the country. And it is in this context, we first of all must commend the media for its work in bringing the awareness of the population of this dreaded Zika virus, particularly for our pregnant patients. In Brazil, we have about 1.3 million people affected, and there are about 4,500 suspected cases of microcephaly. And that is the most dangerous issue facing the population with this Zika virus. The adult population, or the children, the children will not be affected as badly as the chikungunya or the dengue. But the ones who are going to be affected are the pregnant patients who we know have an associated risk factor, a risk of having children with microcephaly. Now, if we have patients with microcephaly, it's pronounced both ways, microcephaly, and there are other etiologic causative factors for microcephaly, as my colleague from Faisabad, a gynecologist like myself, know. Fetal alcohol syndrome, if a patient takes just 1 or 2 drinks of alcohol, that will cause that. We don't know how many drinks will cause the baby's head to become smaller, but we always advise not even 1 drink for a patient who is pregnant, not 1 alcoholic drink. But in Brazil, out of the 4,500 cases of microcephaly, they have now confirmed serious brain damage in at least 240 patients, 242, and the work is going on. The United States Disease for Center Control are sending out guidelines and protocols for people traveling to countries that are suffering, that have the presence of the Zika virus. We have it in Brazil, we have it in Colombia, we have it in Venezuela, next door in Barbados, it is in Jamaica, and we have it now in Trinidad. And a number of tropical countries, the Latin American and the Caribbean countries, are going to be more severely affected from time to time. So therefore, we want to ask the government, I know the Minister of Health has been speaking about it from time to time, and he has indicated that he's finding about $7 million for funding for defogging and spraying of homes and areas. The media is doing this part in bringing the awareness to the national population, like they expressed today, the Zika Zap, the Guardian, Zika Alert, and so on. And then speaking about what the Minister of Health is doing, and he said, first of all, he will get about $5 million to fight Zika, and now he's saying that we'll get about $7 million and wanting to give approximately $500,000 to each one of the regional corporations. That's important, and that is quite good. The Minister said, don't panic at one time in 18th of February, but Honorable Minister and colleagues, I as a gynecologist have received hundreds of calls within the last 2 weeks of patients who are pregnant, and they're very frightened as to what to do. So as the Honorable Prime Minister indicated at the intersessional meeting in Belize, we need to develop some protocols for the management of suspected patients who are pregnant. Now, a lot of patients would not know that they've had the virus. So what are we going to tell the 17,000 pregnant patients how to be managed? And that is the important question that has to be answered. The first issue, Madam Speaker, the Honorable Prime Minister is disturbing me.
He's disturbing the country.
What? Tell me across, Keith, I can't hear it.
He's a menace to the country.
So the question is, what is the Ministry of Health going to set up for the 17,000 patients who stand the risk of having babies with microcephaly? Now, the consequence of a baby with microcephaly is serious brain damage. And could you imagine what consequential, financial, emotional distress will occur to a family, to a mother who has a child with microcephaly, and that child has brain damage for the rest of that couple's life? That couple's life is dedicated to that one child, and all the energy will be spent on that. And could you imagine if we have a number of cases like that, what consequential damage to the psyche of the population and mothers? So it is imperative that we work together. And that is just from the microcephaly part and brain damage resulting from the Zika virus in pregnant patients. So when do we screen these patients who are pregnant? Is it the first trimester after 14 weeks, the second trimester, or both the first and second trimester, and across the third trimester up to 40 weeks? We have to be able to measure the size of the baby's head as the baby grows in utero. So we have to find ultrasounds across the country, in the whether the health centers or the hospitals or in the private centers, and the competent people to be able to measure these children's size head as we go along in the pregnancy. So the question is, the minister would want to look at that to see how best, we have 17,000 deliveries, how best you're going to monitor these patients, who is going to monitor them, how often you're going to have ultrasound for them, and what you're going to do for these patients who have now discovered, unfortunately, hopefully that we don't have a case, but we have to look to the future to see, make sure we prevent it. But if we do have a case, what are we going to do? You can't offer them abortion because abortion is illegal in Trinidad and Tobago. Anybody who procures an abortion or attempts to procure an abortion is guilty of felony. So what it is that we're going to do with patients if, God forbid, end up with a problem of having a microcephalic infant? The second issue is the question of the Guillain-Barré syndrome. That is a ascending neurologic disorder that causes paralysis from the limbs come up. There are a number of patients have been found to be associated with Guillain-Barré syndrome, having developed the Zika virus. And that Guillain-Barré syndrome can move up to the body to affect the respiratory system and cause people not to be able to breathe. And patients have died as a result of Guillain-Barré syndrome. So we also have to alert the population if there are cases of Zika found in certain areas to look at that possible sequelae as well. So it calls for a lot more public information, a lot more awareness to the population. And well, the minister, it's important that I've seen that he has given 7 million to the mosquito assault. The other issue is the Zika virus and the microcephaly, is the Zika virus an etiologic or causative factor in the microcephaly? The Argentine scientists are now saying that they feel that what Brazil has been saying is not so. They believe that it is the insecticide that has been sprayed that is causing that. So the minister must have his research team looking at that very critically to see whether the constituents of the malathion that they are spraying across and with the defogging, whether that was used in the area in Brazil that have caused this microcephaly. And we have to be careful. Now, how do we prevent the spread of this? Well, we all know that the defogging exercise is one, the cleaning up of the environment. The homes have to work well to ensure that they don't have any utensils with clean water, because these viruses thrive in clean water. They multiply during the day in vases, in uncovered barrels of water, anywhere around the home. And there are a number of lots in the country, which I know the Honorable Minister was speaking about, which the regional corporations and our regional corporations that we manage from the UNC are taking the lead The member for Tabaquite was with a number of the regional corporations, working with them to see how fast they can clean up a number of the lots across the country to make sure that these lots are not inhabited with these mosquitoes. Well, we know from the research perspective, you have the genetic factor modified mosquitoes that some countries have brought in Latin America. But we don't want to go there because that has more side effects than anything else. So I'm glad the minister has indicated that we are not thinking about the modified approach to the genetically modified mosquitoes and the male mosquitoes, bringing them in to deal with the situation. And so now I want to tell the government and the Honorable Prime Minister that the World Bank has also launched a campaign together with WHO and is giving $150 million US to Latin American and Caribbean countries so that they can seek to get some funding, additional funding from that as well. And the World Bank is in fact speaking about the same issues that we are talking about, and in the quest to reduce the deadly virus becoming continuing to become a dangerous issue across Latin America and the Caribbean. But also countries now, countries that are not in the tropical region are advising their people, be careful in traveling to countries where the virus is present. Now the world knows now that Trinidad has a case, and there, as I speak now, I understand there are 2 more suspected cases in central Trinidad. So, Madam Speaker, how much time I have left today? 5 minutes, thanks. So, in central Trinidad, I understand there are 2 cases that are suspected. No, suspected so far. They're not confirmed, so we will have to. Now, I want to say, Madam Speaker, our People's Partnership government, when it came for renewing the Minister of Health, will tell you, the former Minister of Health, when it came to reviewing the center where CAF has to be relocated, made sure that in cabinet he came and he said, Prime Minister and team, we must keep CAF in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is one of the benefits that CAF is giving to Trinidad by being right here so we can get the results right here in a quick space of time. And of course, CAF gives support to the entire Caribbean countries within the CARICOM area. So the minister, it would be very important. Now, the point I was making about tourism, the Caribbean countries will not have the amount of tourists as we're supposed to have because of this virus situation, because nobody would want to come to a country, pick up the virus and go back home and have problems, the thing spreading. So obviously it's going to affect the tourism sector within the Caribbean. It will affect our tourism sector possibly. Well, we don't have as many tourists in Trinidad, but we have more in Tobago. But you never know how fast it can reach to Tobago. So the issue of the Zika virus is a problem for the pregnant patients, and the ministry with its advisors and technical team must focus on developing the protocols for management of patients with suspected cases and what do they do for them. If they are proven to be positive for the Zika virus, how are they going to manage them, and the sequelae to the management of these patients who may or may not, God forbid, develop microcephalic infants. And of course, the issue of the Guillain-Barré syndrome has to be brought to the forefront as well. So, Madam Speaker, we all want to work together, the community as a whole, the nation as a whole, and people across Trinidad and Tobago, are very determined to make sure that it does not occur close to their neighborhood or in their home, and they are doing their part. And we congratulate the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. We must tell them that to continue to do what they're doing in terms of ensuring their surrounding is clean. We want to see a more aggressive media aspect of this program in terms of preaching to the population the continued necessity to keep their environment and the surroundings clean. And beside the defogging and the spraying of the homes, the World Bank has also recommended, and this is what they are giving the finances for, to support a range of activities critical to the Zika virus response, including vector surveillance. That is important, have people going around checking. I know we have 1.3 million population, we probably have about 400,000 households or even less, so that could be looked at. And control, identification of the people most at risk, the pregnant patients, especially pregnant women, as said here, and women of reproductive age. And let me make this point. There are a number of young teenagers in this country who become pregnant, and I made this point about more than 5 years ago, while I was in opposition, I remember, I think, in the law house. There are over 2,500 cases of teenage pregnancies in this country. And therefore,
Member, your speaking time has expired.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We look forward to working with the government on this issue and give you all our support in the interest of the people. Thank you.
Minister of Health.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when I got notice of this motion, I was very happy for it because I think it's an important issue. However, my joy at having to come here to give a responsible reply has been lessened by the diametrically opposite positions taken by UNC spokesmen, and I will come to that very soon. Because it is absolutely amazing how those opposite can't speak with one voice on a very important national health issue like this. And I will demonstrate that to show the fear and panic and inconsistency of views amongst their own medical doctors, which is staggering. It is reckless. It is actually reckless. Madam Speaker, my presentation is themed From Plan to Action. On December 29, 2015, the Ministry of Health called a meeting of CARFA, PAHO, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Health, to come up with an integrated management system approach to deal with Zika. December 29, 2015, when the country was partying between Christmas and New Year's. On January 29th, with the approval and guidance and advice of the Cabinet and the Honorable Prime Minister, we announced a national public health emergency. And this is where the double speak of the UNC has now begun. When we announced that, no other person than the former Minister of Health accused me of causing panic in the country. Panic. Chastised me in the media for causing panic. But here today you have a motion. And what does the motion say? The motion talks about the confirmed threat to health and welfare. Where was Caroni East on January 29th to support this government's call to action? Where was he? Where was he? But that national call to action, Madam Speaker, the purpose was to do exactly what this motion speaks about and which we have done. Develop the protocols to ease fear and tension and to focus resources and inject a sense of urgency into the fight for Zika. We developed the local government response protocols on that same day. On January 29th, after my press conference, I hurried down to Kent House and met with all chairmen of all 14 regional corporations. And today, out of that meeting, you are seeing the protocols being applied, the cleaning of the lots and so on, and $500,000 to each corporation to start this fight against Zika. What did the declaration of a public health emergency mean? As I said, the concentration of resources and thinking, and the University of the West Indies, I'm not saying in response to Trinidad, but responsibly so, has developed the Zika task force to conduct research and surveillance in the Caribbean. And that is what we are doing. We are partnering with everyone, not only spraying, but the university. The WHO 3 days later, after Trinidad and Tobago took the lead, declared a global public health emergency. But I didn't hear Barataria Sawa. I didn't say global means world. I didn't hear Barataria Sawa tell WHO that they're causing fear and panic. We were in the forefront. We were ahead of the curve. And what did we do? What did we do? We started developing the protocols to treat with the impending arrival of Zika. So out of those protocols was the establishment of the Rapid Response Unit, which we trialed on February 2nd in Bagatelle. Then we trialed it this week, March the 17th, in Penal. I personally went down to Penal, met with the corporation, met with insect vector control, met with public health, alerted them as to what we are doing to get buy-in from all 14 regional corporations. That is what a proactive government does. So we planned. But on Thursday the 18th, after we had confirmation of the first case, as I said, this presentation is plan to action. We actioned, we operationalized the plans. Because when we got word of the confirmation on Wednesday the 17th, we put the plan into action, and Madam Speaker, I can report to this House that the plan worked flawlessly. It was a flawless execution of the Rapid Response Unit. It was a proactive response. Madam Speaker, the doublespeak that emerges from speakers opposite, my colleague Caroni East supports me, and I thank him for his support in not bringing genetically modified mosquitoes to Trinidad. But do you know, the former Minister of Health under your administration was actively engaged in Oxitec to bring them here? Do you know that? Do you know that? So I don't understand who is the spokesman opposite for Zika. He is supporting me for not bringing genetically modified mosquitoes, but there was active consideration, active talks to bring it, not to think about it, to bring it under the last Minister of Health. Seriously? I am telling you. Yes. And I came out in public and said, I will not do it. And it wasn't a matter of money.
I'd like to hear the contribution of the Minister of Health.
And it's not a matter of the money and the expense. It's a matter of you do not introduce an invasive radioactive species into your country without having independent peer review testing that tells you that this thing is safe and practical and does not wipe out your indigenous ecosystem. And I'm happy for the support of Caroni East on this. Caroni East spoke about the cancelling of tourism, but it is Barataria Sawa who urged us on this side to cancel Carnival after WHO declared a global public health emergency. To whom does the country look opposite for guidance on this issue? One saying about tourism, one saying cancel Carnival. To whom do we look for guidance on that side? The country looks for guidance on this side. The country looks for guidance from this Prime Minister and his ministers. Because if we had listened to them, we would have done nothing on Zika. Because they did not support us on the 29th of January when we declared a national public health emergency. I want to go to this issue of testing for Zika. The only lab that tests for Zika is CARPHA, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, funded. CARPHA is a post-runner to CAREC, which Dr. Eric Williams brought to Trinidad and Tobago. CAREC was here, CARFA is here. If you want to argue about that, we will go outside. But the fact of the matter is, I saw on Facebook a post stating that there are 2 cases of Zika in South Trinidad and the Minister of Health is hiding it. I want to tell people who are intent on causing mischief, the government repository of information on these diseases is not any private lab or hospital lab. It is CARFA. And I want to urge people on Facebook not to go into that realm. It is only CARFA. That is why when Caroni spoke about 2 cases in Central, I asked him, has that been confirmed by CARFA? And the answer is no. The Ministry of Health, the government, does not determine these cases. It is CARFA via blood testing. The member for Caroni East, in his, and I said I was glad that he brought the motion, but then he injected some confusion with the Argentinian finding of putting a larvicide in the water supply and malathion. We have been using malathion in Trinidad for donkey's years. Donkey's years. And we have had no adverse events. The situation is the Argentinians are pointing to a larvicide put into the public water system. The 2 are totally different. So let's not confuse the issue. We on this side will think with clarity and come to the public with clarity. Let us talk about protocols again. The Honorable Prime Minister, after Trinidad and Tobago abdicated its responsibility and leadership role in CARICOM for 5 years, went to Belize and took a leadership position in asking for a Caribbean protocol response to Zika. And I am happy that if the independent agencies within CARICOM, like UWI, with the Zika Task Force and CARFA, really works with the political directorate of CARICOM to come up with protocols to deal with Zika Caribbean-wise. Let's do that. Let's do that. Madam Speaker, what are the protocols we are using to protect all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago? All 1.3 million citizens. Public education as part of the integrated management system. It's a whole of government and whole of society approach. And that is what we have started to do. In the schools, we have started it. In the communities, we have started it. So public education is vital. Because if the public does not buy into the message, we could do what we want. But if the public does not accept some personal responsibility to keep their surroundings clean, we will not have the effect that we want. So public education is crucial. The other protocols are these. We have to follow WHO protocols when it comes to dealing with Zika. The protocols are established and the protocols are clear. And as yesterday we reported to WHO, we have our first confirmed case of Zika. What are the other protocols? In the case in Diego Martin, what we instituted was protocols again, based on WHO and based on the integrated management response. So what did we do? We contacted the immediate family of the patient. And I saw in the news she was being referred to as a victim. She's not a victim, she's a patient. She's a patient. So the CMOH, we operationalized the response. The CMOH visited the patient, visited the immediate family, they were examined, blood investigations taken on all her immediate family, and even those family members who don't live within her immediate surroundings. We traced them and we took blood samples. The protocols also dictate that we go to her workplace, which we did. No symptoms were displayed by any of her colleagues, thankfully. So those were the immediate protocols to treat with the patient. The field operations protocols also kicked in because we practiced it twice, as I said, in Bagatelle and in Penal. And as at 6:30 yesterday morning, Thursday morning, less than about 15 hours after we got confirmation at 2:30 on Wednesday, about 15 hours later, insect vector control was in there, the Diego Martin Regional Corporation was in there, the protective services were in there, and the CMOH was in there. We did perifocal inspections of 252 houses around the area. 43 were locked, and that's a problem we have, the locked homes. But we are treating with that. Of the houses we could have gotten into, Madam Speaker, 3 were found positive for Aedes aegypti larvae, and samples of the larvae have been taken away for testing to see if the larvae are in fact positive for Zika. The remaining houses have been notified and they are to be sprayed today. We did thermal fogging for 45 houses and residual spraying for 108 houses. And I just got word 5 minutes ago that what we promised to do yesterday with the closed houses, we have done today, and of the households notified, we have sprayed all, and we have sprayed an additional 300 houses in and around that index case. So the protocols to protect all citizens, man, woman, child, to protect all citizens have been developed by the Ministry of Health since December 29th. They were practiced in Bagatelle, they were practiced in Penal, and they are now into full swing. And I can give this country the assurance that no stone is being left unturned to protect all 1.3 million people against Zika. We urge all citizens to follow the WHO protocols to treat with Zika. The WHO protocols speak about source reduction, that if you are pregnant, thinking about being pregnant, use light, long clothing, cover your skin as much as possible, use insect repellent on your exposed hands, cover yourselves. We are giving out free nets at all our antenatal clinics. That is a significant move to protect those populations. So we are doing all that we can. But Madam Speaker, at the end of the day, the integrated management system has 2 components. The ongoing components, which are health education and social communications, we are doing that. And I agree with the member for Caroni East that we need to ramp up our media presence. And that will be done. I take your advice, and we will do that. We need to ramp up our surveillance. That has been done. Our integrated vector management is ongoing, has been done, and is ongoing. I don't want the population to feel that all this activity is only as a result of the index case discovered on Wednesday. This has been an ongoing exercise since the start of this year. What we have done, we have looked at the map of Trinidad and Tobago, where dengue and chikungunya are endemic. That therefore tells you the Aedes aegypti are in those areas. And just to explain to the national population, and as I say, I am so glad that Caroni East brought this motion. The Aedes aegypti, and I've used this analogy, is like your pet dog. You find the mosquito around humans, the same way you find your pet dogs around humans, because the female mosquito cannot live without the blood of a human being. So wherever you have human settlements is where you will find the Aedes aegypti. You will have high indices of Aedes aegypti, especially in those communities that don't have pipe-borne water. So they have to store water in drums and barrels. But Madam Speaker, here is where I have noticed going into Bagatelle and Penal. Many people are beginning to heed the warnings. and they are turning over their plant sources and they are cleaning. But in the areas that don't get a pipe-borne water supply, and people have their 400-gallon tanks, for those of us who use the tanks with a pipe-borne supply, there's a hole at the top of the tank, which is the intake for water, right, a 3/4-inch hole. So if you are getting water from your mains, the water goes into the top of the tank, and then you draw water from the bottom of the tank. But for those areas that don't have a pipe-borne water supply and rely on WASA or the corporation to fill their tanks, the little hole, 3/4-inch hole, is left open. So public education, a little thing like that 3/4-inch hole, which is left open at the top of the tank, you have to take a little piece of flash band, which costs next to nothing, and cover that hole. Because inside the tank where you can't see, as I said, you have the larvae, and the mosquitoes will come out in their thousands. So local government could clean the drains every day. You could let your plants die, as I have advocated. But if you don't cover with that piece of little flash band, that 3/4-inch hole at the top of the tank, which is supposed to be the intake from your mains, you are defeating the whole system. And that is part of the public education. People, and I was very happy to see in Penal, I visited a church, and you could see this family loves their plants. Had about 100 plants. You know what I saw? They took out every single saucer. They took out every, and I was so happy to see that.
It's expired.
Thank you.
Member for Barataria, Sano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For a tit-to-tat over a very serious problem in Trinidad and Tobago. The Member of Parliament for Caroni East brought this motion to the Parliament, and all you sought to do was to attack him, attack me about what happened. That's what he did. I will not, Madam Speaker, I will not go down that route. What I found is that his approach to Zika management is flashbang approach on water tanks. Now, Madam Speaker, that is a new flashbang approach to Zika. I commend the people of the Ministry of Health for looking at the Zika problem and advising the Minister to call a public health emergency. I commend the people of the Ministry of Health for that. Now, what you mentioned that I as Minister of Health, tried to bring in the GM-modified mosquitoes from Oxitec. And I still believe that is a good thing. And you know why? You see, in the United States of America, they are starting to look at that approach for using sterile male mosquitoes to impregnate female Anopheles, Aedes aegypti mosquitoes to prevent any eggs being produced. And that is what it is. It's not a matter of radioactive things. So I think you should check that out properly. Now, even Margaret Chan from the World Health Organization, the head of the World Health Organization, has said there is no correlation between Zika and microcephaly. There's none. What I'm saying is you have created the panic. You created the panic by saying Zika, public health, and microcephaly, and you've gone along that route. One thing what I will have to say is that, yes, it is an emergency, but it's not just Zika that's causing it. So what is the motion is because you have brought the population to a position where there is serious panic about pregnant women having microcephalic babies. And that's what it is. WHO has said there's no correlation.
And what is the emergency?
But there's no correlation.
What is the emergency for them?
Because the Zika problem at that time, February 16, there was. I'm not certain now because I'll tell you why. The Argentinian doctors came up with the thing that's peroxyprofen was the larvicide that is being used, and it has been the microcephaly cases were found in all those areas that had the peroxyprofen. It has not been in Colombia. Colombia has almost over 3,000 cases, no microcephaly. Uganda, no microcephaly. Zika rampant. So how could you possibly say one country that has microcephaly is caused by Zika. So what I'm saying to you, you're doing a good job by attacking the mosquito. Chikungunya is more dangerous, and so too is dengue. Dengue kills. Dengue hemorrhagic fever 4. It kills. So what you're doing really and truly is to attack the mosquito. You're not attacking Zika. So stop saying it's Zika you're attacking. You're attacking the Aedes aegypti mosquito. And that is what you're doing. And that is what we were doing all the time. Because dengue and chikungunya and Zika come from the same source. So once you decide to go on a campaign, which we did also for chikungunya, chickpea and dengue, to allow people to clean up their surroundings, have the media approach, etc., is a good thing. But what I'm saying to you, everybody is taking on the Zika and says Zika is causing A, B, C, D, and E, whereas it has not been fully proven. Epidemiologically, the epidemiological factor, it is now coming out. You should read the latest from Margaret and WHO. Read it. And also they're looking at GM modified mosquitoes to curb the female Aedes aegypti. That is the new facts. And this fact is less than 1 day old, not 1 new things. They are questioning the Argentinian study where they are saying that the larvicidal caused that. But the only people who are questioning it, but they're not attacking it, are the people who are responsible for manufacturing the vaccines. So in other words, what is happening in the world today is that you create a fear and panic so you can supply a good. Because the Argentinians are saying that microcephaly is only in those areas where the water was sprayed with the peroxypyrophene. But I'll go into something, I don't have much time. We started an approach to have 500 employees, temporary employees, to walk around Trinidad and Tobago attached to various regional corporations. We had already interviewed and the NUGFW had also put their input, but you all stopped it.
Honourable Member for Barataria San Juan, your speaking time has expired. The Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm compelled in a short 5-minute interval to just respond to some of the material put forward by the last speaker, the Honourable Member for Barataria San Juan. Trinidad and Tobago has a government installed. The government's responsibility is to deal with threats and to engage in enabling an environment which can deal with efficient approaches. The Minister of Health has put onto the record that the vector, the Aedes aegypti mosquito, which is dealing with the cause and spread of chikungunya, yellow fever, of dengue, and of the Zika virus, is being dealt with. It is the obligation of a responsible Minister of Health to inform the population of Trinidad and Tobago, because the last speaker spoke about genetically modified mosquitoes, advocating it whilst his colleague did not. And then across the floor earlier had to say, and I'll put it on the record, that there is an extremely prohibitive cost with respect to genetically modified mosquitoes. A Minister of Health has as a primary responsibility the obligation to take the information to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I wish to publicly commend the Minister of Health for taking a drive which we have not seen with respect to the management of the vector, the Aedes aegypti mosquito, to walk the streets, ensure that information is spread, because prevention is better than cure, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm able to tell the Honourable Minister that he is receiving able support from the Attorney General's office. We are currently reviewing the Regulation 27 as amended by the Law Revision Act, Chapter 303 of the Public Health Ordinance, Chapter 12, Number 4. That Public Health Ordinance is a 1979 ordinance, which provides for a penalty of a mere $500 with respect to people who fail to take precautionary measures with respect to the vector, then as associated with yellow fever only, the Aedes aegypti mosquito. The law is being looked at right now because every measure of assistance that Trinidad and Tobago can expect must be provided. And the Ministry of the Attorney General is actively reviewing the law as it relates to the regulations, the public health ordinance regulations, and we intend to deal with that imminently. It provides, Madam Speaker, for a term of imprisonment and for a pecuniary sum which can go up to $3,500. Let's not spare what we can easily afford. Let us engage as a nation in responsible management. We ask only that the opposition manage to gather its pieces. As I've said before publicly in the Parliament, the economy, crime and the position of security, health, education, the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, they require a concerted, unified effort of government and opposition. And it does not help the population, Madam Speaker, most respectfully, for my learned colleagues sitting on one bench opposite to have polar positions with respect to one issue of a vector control, when Trinidad and Tobago is witnessing, in a manner that it hasn't seen for years, a Minister of Health with the gusto and enterprise to stand up, walk the streets of Trinidad and Tobago to make sure that people are aware of a situation. And to do that, notwithstanding the clamor of other issues or the distraction of important events such as Carnival. How often do you get that kind of buy-in? Far be it from a condemnation of the Honourable Minister of Health, there is a compliment due. Not that he's looking for one. This is the job we were retained to do, Madam Speaker, and which we will discharge for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you for the opportunity to put the record clear.
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move this House now adjourn to Friday, the 26th of February at 1:30 p.m., which is Private Members' Day. And on that day, could the opposition please tell us what matter you'll be dealing with?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, the Acting Leader of Government Business. The opposition intends to debate the second motion on the order paper on Private Members' Day, dealing with the attention deficit disorder.
Honourable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to Friday, the 26th of February, 2016 at 1:30 p.m. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I guess the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned till Friday, the 26th of February, 2016 at 1:30 p.m.
This has been a presentation of the Parliament Channel and Parliament Radio 105.5 FM.